We continue now at the top of Daf Nun Amud Aleph in Maseches Avodah Zarah. This is Avodah Zarah Daf 50a. On the previous summer, there was a machlokas tanoim between Rabbi Yishmael and the Chachamim in the Mishnah. When stones are found next to the Markulis idol, are they osur or are they mutter? And Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan discuss different formations which indicate whether they are osur or mutter, as the Gemara will now explain. And the Gemara says the case specifically is when you find them next to the Markulis, but we don't really know if they came from the Markulis or not. And the Gemara continues and explains, B'mekuravos nami. Now, if they're close also, to ikol ameimar minei nafa, where we could say that they fell from the Markulis itself, so divrei hakol asuros, then everybody would agree that they are prohibited. Rashi explains, B'mekuravos, it means to say, kagon ba'amah v'chatzi amah. The Bach adds in the word ma'od, that they're very close, like an amah or half an amah to the Markulis, so then everybody agrees that they're asur. Ki pligi, when is there machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanon? B'meruchakos, when they are far away. And Rashi explains meruchakos, and the Bach adds kilomar besochar ba'amos, far away, still within 4 amos. Devadai lav minei nofel, but it certainly did not fall from the Markulis itself. So again, that's the machlokas b'meruchakos, when there's somewhat of a distance from the Markulis. And the Gemara continues and asks, "V'habitzad Markulis katani," but it says next to the Markulis. How could you say that the stones are far away in the Mishnah? And the Gemara says to that, "My bitzad." No, what does it mean by the side of the Markulis? It just means bitzad arba amos didei. It means at the side within 4 amos of the Markulis. Again, that's the case in the Mishnah where Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan are arguing. And the Gemara now explains the machlokas. Rabbi Yishmael holds osin Markulis katan bitzad Markulis gadol. They would make a small version of the Markulis next to the larger version of the Markulis. As we said on the previous Amud, the Markulis was this Avodah Zarah where they piled stones on there, and so the point is they would make a smaller version of that next to the Markulis. And so shalosh, so if you have 3 stones over there, the Damian Markulis, that is similar to a Markulis, asuros, that is forbidden, shtayim mutars, but if it's just 2 stones, then it is mutter. And Rashi explains, Osin Markulis Katan Kolomar Darkon Lasos Kain. The Gemara means to say that that was a normal thing that they would do, and therefore if you have 3, it's going to be Asur, 2 is going to be Mutter. Rabbanan Savri and the Rabbanan hold, Ein Osin Markulis Katan Betzad Markulis Gadol. They wouldn't make a small Markulis next to a large Markulis, Loshna Shalosh Veloshna Shtayim, and therefore it doesn't matter if it's 3 stones or 2 stones. Niros Imo Asuros, if they appear with, meaning they're very close to the Markulis, so then they are forbidden. It's clear that's where they came from. She'ein niros imo, but if they're not very close to the Markulis mutaros, then they are permitted. And Rashi explains, niros imo means mikuravos ma'od. Again, if they're very close, then the Rabbanon hold they are asur. She'ein niros imo mutaros, but if they are not very close, they're mutter delav minei nafel, because they didn't fall from the Markulis. And the Gemara continues at the 2 dots. Amar Mar, the master said, we said above on the previous Amud, B'yodua she'noshru mimenu, if it's known that the stones came off of the Markulis, so divrei hakol asuros, then everybody agrees that they are prohibited, they are forbidden. The Gemara continues, Uramini, we have a contradiction on that from the following brisa. It says, Avonim she'noshru min ha-Markulis, if you have stones that they fell from the Markulis, here the brisa is talking where we know they came from the Markulis, so niros imo asuros, again, if they're very close, then they're forbidden. She'ein niros imo mutaros, if they're not very close to the Markulis, they are mutter, they're permitted. For Rabbi Yishmael Omer, Rabbi Yishmael says, Shalosh asuros, if there are 3 stones, they're forbidden. Shtayim mutaros, 2 stones are permitted. So the exact same machlokas between the Rabbanan and Rabbi Yishmael, but it is specifically in a case where we know that the stones came from the Markulis, not like we said above. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rava says, Lo tema shenashru. You shouldn't say that this brisa means to say shenashru, that they came off the Markulis. Eloima shenimtzu, rather it simply means they were found by the Markulis. Again, exactly as we explained before, we don't know whether or not they came from the Markulis, and again, that's the subject of the machlokas between Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan. But the Gemara continues and asks, V'sav Rabbi Yishmael shtayim mutaros, does Rabbi Yishmael really hold that 2 stones are mutter? And Rashi explains, V'sav Rabbi Yishmael shtayim besoch arba amos of mutaros, does Rabbi Yishmael really hold that if you have 2 stones within arba amos, that those are mutter? Is that really the case? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa. Rabbi Yishmael says, shtayim betfisalo, if you have 2 betfisalo, which we'll see Rashi in a moment, means within daled amos, asuros, they actually are forbidden. And shaloshim, when it comes to 3 stones, afilu meruchakos asuros, even if there's some distance, we would say that they are forbidden. And Rashi explains, V'atanya Rabbi Yishmael Omer shtayim betfisalo, if you have 2 stones betfisalo, ustam tfisa daled amos, generally speaking the word tfisa indicates 4 amos, v'katani asuros, and we're saying that they are forbidden. And so here you see, again, that Rabbi Yishmael holds even 2 stones within daled amos are going to be forbidden. And the Gemara continues and answers. Amar Rava says, Lo kash, it's not difficult. Kan b'tfisa achas, in one case we're talking b'tfisa achas, which Rashi will explain, and kan b'shtei tfisos, in the other case we're talking about two tfisos. Vehechi dami, what does it mean, two tfisos? Di'ika gova beinu avein, it means there's some kind of elevation separating between the markulis and these stones, and so that separation, already in such a situation, we have more reason to be lenient. And Rashi explains, b'tfisa achas, hadakatani asuras, when we say that the stones are forbidden, and again, that was talking about being forbidden even when it's just two stones. That's what Rabbi Yishmael said, shtayim b'tfisa lo asuros. When we said they're forbidden, b'tfisa achas, that's talking b'tfisa achas, means to say, she'ein hefsek beinom lemarkulis. Tfisa achas means, essentially, you can get it all at once, you can grab it all at once, so to speak. The idea being there's nothing separating between the stones and the markulis. V'asura bein Rabbi Yishmael bein Rabbanan, and Rashi says, if it's b'tfisa achas, it actually would be asur whether you're following Rabbi Yishmael or the Rabbanan. Techol toch dalet amos niros imo karilei, because if it's within 4 amos, that's called niros imo, and so therefore it would be forbidden according to all opinions. Again, the Rabbanan, they said that it's dependent upon niros imo, and so really everybody would agree to that in a situation of tfisa achas. Uveshalosh meruchakos hu depligi, and the whole machlokus between Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan is if you have 3 stones that are further away. Again, that's when Rabbi Yishmael specifically says by 3 stones. V'hadu kimna le'el pluksayu b'soch dalet amos. Now Rashi notes that which we said earlier, we seem to say not like this. We said that the machlokus between Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan is specifically within dalet amos. That's where there's a machlokus. Well, Rabbi Yishmael shtayim mutaris, and within dalet amos, Rabbi Yishmael said 2 are mutar. Well, the Rabbanan gimel nami mutaris, and we said according to the Rabbanan even 3 can be mutar. That's b'shtei tfisos kidim afarish. That is specifically talking where it's shtei tfisos, meaning it is within dalet amos, but it's shtei tfisos means there's some kind of separation. When there's some kind of separation within dalet amos, so then you have the machlokus between Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan. And what does that mean? Di'ika gova, there's some kind of elevation. Teil mafsik beinam lemarkulis, there's some kind of a mound that separates between the stones and the markulis. Dahaviluhu kemeruchakos, that already is considered like meruchakos, where again Rashi said above, by meruchakos, by 3 meruchakos, that's where Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan argue. Teleko lemeimar mine naflu, now if you have a separation of this elevation, you can't say they fell from the markulis. Hilkach Rabbi Yishmael shtayim mutaros, therefore according to Rabbi Yishmael 2 are mutar. Aval gimel asuros, but 3 actually would be forbidden. The osin markulis katan b'tzad markulis gadol, for the reason that Rabbi Yishmael, that we gave in Rabbi Yishmael above, that they would make a small markulis next to the large markulis. And so then essentially what is going on over here is that you have a machlokus in situations where it is not coming from the markulis. The stones are not coming from the markulis, so that's where there's a machlokus, Rabbi Yishmael and the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan say, well, if it's not coming from the markulis, then it is not forbidden. But Rabbi Yishmael says, no, there's an idea of os and markulis katan, b'tzad markulis gadol, which can be a reason to say that they are asur. But the Gemara continues and asks, so markulis ki haigavna mihave, is it really markulis if the stones are arranged next to one another? V'atanya, but we learned in a brisa, Elohein avnei beis kulias, what's considered the stones of beis kulias, of markulis? Achas mikan v'achas al gabein, you have to have 1 stone here, 1 stone there, and then 1 stone, the 3rd stone on top of them. And so over here, if they're all next to each other, that should not be an arrangement that indicates markulis. And the Gemara continues and answers, Amar Rava says, Kitanyo ahi, what is that brisa referring to? Be'ikr markulis, that's by the main markulis, but again, we're talking about the small markulis that's made next to the larger one, and so that is different. Rashi explains, Ki agavna zu b'tzadzu, again, if it's arranged one next to the other, is that really markulis? And the Gemara answered, Ikr markulis, tchilaso, meaning when you're first making markulis. Avil katan hanasa b'tzad hagadol, if you make a smaller one next to the bigger one, ovdin lo kaldehu, then in any arrangement, they would worship it. And the Gemara continues, Be Yanai Malka, the house of Yanai, Charav, it was destroyed. It's referring to King Yanai. Asu Ovdei Kochavim Ukimu Be Markulis. So the Ovdei Kochavim, the idolaters, came and they established over there the idol Markulis. Asu Ovdei Kochavim Achrini, other idol worshippers came, the Lo Palchila Markulis. They didn't worship Markulis. Shaklinu, so they took these stones, V'chipu Behen Derachim V'satar Taros, and they used those stones to cover over or to make paths and roads. They used them for streets. Ika Rabbanan de Parshi, there were some Rabbanan who separated from these streets. They didn't want to use these streets because of the Markulis stones. Ika Rabbanan de Lo Parshi, but there were other from the Rabbanan who did not separate. They had no problem using these streets. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Binon shel kedoshim mahalech alei, and the sons of the holy ones, the son of the holy ones, he walks upon them. V'anon nifrosh mehen, and we should separate from them. There are these holy people who are willing to use these streets, and we should separate. And the Gemara says, Man niu binon shel kedoshim. Who does this refer to when it says the sons of the holy ones? And the Gemara says, Rabbi Menachem b'Rabbi Simoy. It refers to Rabbi Menachem b'Rabbi Simoy. V'amai karu le binon shel kedoshim. And why do they refer to him as the sons of the holy ones? The afilu bitsursa dezuzah lo mistakel. He wouldn't even look at the image that was on a coin because of the fact that it may be associated with avodah zarah. And the Gemara continues, My time of demand de parish. What's the reason of the one who did separate from these roads? Savar loki hadamar Rav Gidol Amar Rav Chia bar Yosef Amar Rav. He holds like what Rav Gidol said, that Rav Chia bar Yosef said, that Rav said, Minayin letakroves avodas kochavim she'ein la b'tei la'olamis. How do we know that offerings of avodah zarah, they are never batal, they are never nullified? Shedemar, as it says in the pasuk, Vayitzamdu leval peor, they joined Baal Peor, Vayochlu zivchei mesim, and they ate from the sacrifices of the dead. So it's comparing avodah zarah to the dead. Ma meis ein lo b'tei la'olam, just like the dead, they are not nullified forever. It's always usher to get any benefit after kroves avodas kochavim. So too the offerings of avodah zarah, ein la b'tei la'olam, there is never going to be nullification. And Rashi explains, Minayin letakroves, how do you know that the offerings, Vahani tikroves ninu, these are considered offerings? The hazorek even lemarkulis, zuhi avodaso. If someone throws a stone at the markulis, that is the worship of the markulis. Hilkach lav avodas kochavim atzmahi, the tiskilu bebitul. Therefore, it's not considered the actual avodah zarah where bittul is actually possible, and that's the idea over here. That's why there's no bittul forever. And the Gemara continues, Uman de lo parish, and according to the one who did not separate from these roads, what does that one hold? Amar bo'ino ke'in penim veleka. He says that in order for it to be considered an offering of avodah zarah, it has to be an offering similar to the way that we would bring an offering in the Beis Hamikdash. They wouldn't throw stones in the Beis Hamikdash as an offering, and therefore that does not count. Rashi explains, Kein Panim Zvachim Sheva Mikdash Hu Dahavet Takrovas. It has to be similar to Karbonos in the Mikdash. Kedichsiv Zoveach Lelohim Yacharam Bilti LaHashem Levado. The pasuk itself talks about the fact that you can't sacrifice to the idols, only to Hashem. Alma Dome Kilifnim Kari Zevach Avodas Kochavim V'Yavonim Ein Ovdin Lahem Bifnim. So you see, it has to be similar to a sacrifice, and that would not apply by the stones. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Yosef bar Abba. Rav Yosef bar Abba said, Ikla Rava bar Yirmiyah li'asrin. Rava bar Yirmiyah, he came to our locale. V'yosa v'aisi masnisa b'yad, and he came with the following brisa. Ovid kochavim shehevi avonim min hamarkulis. If an ovid kochavim, an idolater, brings stones from markulis, v'chiba behen derachim v'tartios, and he uses them to cover or to construct roads and theaters. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Nun Amud Beis.